The College Football Playoff Semifinal at the Cotton Bowl takes place this Friday, January 10th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And for whatever reason, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below, but it's supposed to snow, and it's supposed to snow hard. It's supposed to, in fact, have blizzard-like conditions and over a foot of snow. So hopefully everyone can get to the game safe and there's no delays or anything like that. But that's not the topic of today's video, even though the weather that Texas will be facing is a lot like the weather that you'd expect Ohio to be facing in the month of January, and the Buckeyes and the Longhorns are playing each other. What I want to talk to you about today is why, despite being a 6-point underdog, and despite the fact that Ohio State has been performing much better so far in the College Football Playoff, 10 reasons why the Texas Longhorns can beat the Ohio State Buckeyes and advance to their first ever national championship game since 2009. Before we get into that, though, I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to like the video, to hit that big red subscribe button so that we can reach 30,000 subscribers, and also so that you can get my content in your feed. Share the video around, and also like the video again to boost our presence in the algorithm. And click the notification bell too. Those things just take a few seconds, if any, maybe even just a second or two of your time. And by hitting the notification bell, you'll get notified when we go live Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You'll get notified when we go live to do play-by-play, color commentary, analysis, and also when I am going to interact with the chat during the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl. And speaking of those two things, at halftime in those games, the winners of my giveaway will be announced. And all you have to do to enter the giveaway, you can still enter it, just comment your thoughts down below. And by thoughts, I just mean you can even comment a period. I'd like you to comment more than just a period or a number, but if you feel lazy, you can just comment down below and you'll enter with your chance to win my giveaway, which is $40 in total, $20 for my merchandise store in form of a gift card, $20 for you to spend on whatever you want to spend on via a Visa. That's the giveaway, and I'll announce 2 of those winners during the Orange Bowl at halftime and 2 during halftime of the Cotton Bowl. If you want to support the channel, check out Patreon page, merchandise store via the links in the description or pinned comment. And also there's a link to my Discord server in the description and pinned comment where I talk college football and many in the Discord talk college football 24/7. Get a chance to interact with me and also my subscribers. We have an awesome community here on College Football with Sam, so please do that. But without further ado, let's dive in. Reason number 10 why Texas can win this game is the story of let's make this Ohio State focused since they're playing Ohio State. It's the story of 2021 Michigan. It's the story of 2022 Ohio State against Georgia, 2021 Michigan against Ohio State that year, by the way. And speaking of that same year in the playoffs, TCU against Michigan in 2022. I am telling you, everyone is picking Texas here. And not Texas, but everyone's picking Texas to lose. My apologies for that confusion. Everyone's picking Texas to lose, almost. And almost everyone on top of that is picking Ohio State to cover. Not just to win, but to cover nearly a touchdown point spread, despite the fact that the computers disagree with that. That right there is clearly a sign of some type of miscommunication. Clearly. Whether that's between, the public and Vegas, or maybe between Vegas and analysts, or whatever that means. There's some type of misunderstanding here. There is, because the analytics and the facts don't necessarily agree as a whole like pie, as the whole picture, that Ohio State should just blow out Texas here. Many believe that, and it's understandable given the fact that Ohio State's the best team in college football, but Texas is a massive underdog here, and the fact that so many look at it like a foregone conclusion that Ohio State's going to win definitely should light a fire under Texas. And while I don't think it'll cause complacency for OSU knowing that team, it could. So I think it's a factor. But more importantly, the reasons get more important as the video goes on. We like to save the best for last. Reason number 9 why Texas can beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl is they have a speed and physicality combination that most teams don't survive against. I mean, look at Texas this year and how many close games they've played against, or they've played in. Arizona State in the Peach Bowl, Clemson made it a little bit close against Texas too. Let's not lie about that. Georgia, the 2 times Texas played them. Texas also played maybe a little bit more comfortable with A&M than they would have liked. But regardless of that, Texas won all of those games except against Georgia, and Georgia's coached by the best in the country in Kirby Smart, and Georgia has really good trench play, and they're really big, and they're really physical. Texas is physical, Texas tackles hard, and Texas is also fast on top of that. All those things combined make it so that Texas is probably the most physical team that Ohio State has played in the playoffs, and potentially the most physical team that Ohio State has played all season long. That's the Texas Longhorns right there. So this team, they have 18 forced fumbles, they have 44 sacks, and they have an elite rushing defense and a great passing defense too. On top of that, they have a lot of NFL talent on the O-line, and we all know about their receiver room and how fast it is and the potential they have at quarterback too. So that's reason number 9. Reason number 8 why Texas can win is they have an edge with their wide receivers, specifically Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond, over Davison Igbinosun and Denzel Burke. Take it from me, who's watched every Ohio State game and pretty closely. Denzel Burke, whether it's against Oregon the first time around, whether it's against Michigan in that game, and some other games too, has been a little bit of a liability. It's the same thing, by the way, with Davison Igbinosun with his holds. He's been better. Burke has been better in the playoffs, but I wonder if that has more to do with other things than them, like the D-line playing out of its mind. Like Knowles, I think, taking kind of a sabbatical from the blitzes and not leaving those corners on islands, for example. Or the offense playing so well that the defense doesn't have to carry the load, or the same load that it did in the regular season. Matthew Golden's nearly 1,000-yard wide receiver, and we all know from his days at Alabama and also his time right now that Isaiah Bond's pretty good too. Isaiah Bond has 532 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. Golden has 936 receiving yards and 9 receiving touchdowns. They both average over 16 yards per reception, and Denzel Burke is allowing opponents to nearly complete like 70% of his of passes that they attempt on him. So there is a pathway for Texas to pass a little bit on Ohio State, even though Ohio State has one of the best, if not the best, passing defenses in the country. Reason number 7 is tight end Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm is one of college football's best tight ends, being a great receiver and blocker. This season, he's second in the team in receiving yards. He's first in the team of receptions. 58 receptions, 744 receiving yards, 7 receiving touchdowns, 12.8 yards per reception. He's a really good yards after catch guy, like really elusive, doesn't have elite speed, but he does a very good job, being shifty. He always gets additional yards after contact too, always falls forward. He's a big guy. I've mistaken him before for an offensive lineman because he's tall and he's big as well. He's really effective at blocking. I think that Gunnar Helm can, if Texas is going to have any hope at running the ball at all, which is not a reason in this video, if they're going to have any hope of doing that, Helm will be a reason why. And I'm curious to see what Helm will do against Arvell Reese or Cody Simon or Sonny Styles, or whether he's lined up with one of Ohio State's elite safeties. I wonder what he can do against him, but odds are he'll have some success through the air, Gunnar Helm will. So that's reason number 7. Reason number 6, and I want to spend a little bit more time on this than some of the other reasons, is Texas is built. They're built to win this game. It's reason number 6 why I think they can beat Ohio State. They're much closer in terms of build. Like when you look at physicality, when you look at speed, when you look at all the NFL players they have, like high-level NFL players, Texas, in that regard, is closer to Michigan and Penn State than they are to Oregon. They're closer to Nebraska, too, than Oregon when you look at just the size of their defensive line and the depth that they have at, like, D-end and D-tackle, or at least had. I thought that Oregon's D-line was pretty good and overhated, but I was wrong. I think like Derek Harmon and their D tackles I think are good, but I was very disappointed in Jordan Birch and Mateo Uiagalelei. I was. With Texas, they have 44 sacks on the year. They have 18 forced fumbles. That I don't think matters a whole lot because Ohio State doesn't turn over the ball much. They're very disciplined. But you look at what Ohio State's done this season, and against Nebraska, against Penn State, and against Michigan, what do you know? They never scored more than 21 points. And you can say they played bad games against Nebraska and Michigan, and they did. You can't say that against Penn State, though. I mean, what have we seen from Ohio State so far in the playoffs? We've seen a lot of counter, a lot of attempts to confuse defenses because they're doing that because the run blocking O-line isn't good. They need to confuse defenses to get the ground game going. We've seen them go pass first and have a lot of success through the year. We've seen a lot of brilliant scheming on both offense and defense. Against Penn State, we saw brilliant scheming with speed options. We saw counters. We saw them run Howard a bit. We saw them be aggressive. And we saw them go for some deep balls. And they didn't connect with them, but they were there at times. And they played out of their minds on defense, limiting Penn State. Their awesome rushing defense. And yet it was 20-13 was the final score. And Penn State, well, held them to 20. Maybe 27 if you want to say that Howard should have gotten that touchdown and an alternate Worley doesn't fumble. But even then, as we already talked about previously, Texas has better receivers than Penn State does. Texas has more talented offensive tackles than Penn State does. Whether you think Penn State or Texas is the better team, and I think there's an argument for either, Texas's offense is probably better built against Ohio State than Penn State's is. Also, Texas's Steve Sarkisian. They don't have James Franklin. So I think that Texas is, with their physicality, with their size, with their speed, and the fact that they're more similar to a Michigan or Penn State than an Oregon in terms of build, especially on defense, I think that gives them a really good shot here in this game. Reason number 5 is, speaking of the offensive tackles, are the offensive tackles, Cameron Williams and Kelvin Banks Jr., who are going to be NFL offensive tackles. Now, Texas has had issues protecting the QB. They have. So I'm not saying they're not going to allow any pressure from Sawyer or Simon or Tyleik Williams or Hamilton or Tuimoloau. I'm not going to say that at all. What I'm saying is there's potential there. And in the same way that Ohio State's been playing to their ceiling, and it's an assumption for a lot of people that they are, there's a possibility that Texas will, on the offensive line, especially with Ewers being healthy now, he's more mobile, therefore he can escape pressure more easily. There's a chance that Texas can give Ewers time with their offensive tackles. I mean, Texas is 83rd in sacks per game allowed, allowing 2.3. And they allow a QB sack percentage of 6.34%, 68th. When you look at Quinn Ewers and his games this season, he's been sacked 27 times. Manning's been sacked 6 times. Ewers surrendered the most sacks against Georgia, 11. 11 of his 27 sacks came from Georgia. He allowed 4 to Vandy in kind of what was a little bit of a hiccup game, 2 to Clemson, and Clemson has, run blocking is horrible, but they have a talented D-line, and then 3 to Arizona State, where Texas couldn't, run the ball at all. But all I'm saying here is Texas will probably allow some pressure, looking at how Ewers has been pressured, and some of that's on Ewers, some of it's on the tackles. But there will be moments, because of the talent here, because of the coaching, Flood's a great offensive line coach, they're very talented, that Texas will have some time to throw. I don't think it will be like the Tennessee game where Nico basically had no time to throw at all. I don't think it'll be like the Oregon game where Ohio State could get significant pressure with 4 all the time and never blitzing. I think that these offensive tackles for Oregon or for Texas, and for Oregon too, are pretty good. But also, Oregon's offensive tackles don't have the same NFL profile. Texas is better at guard as well. When you look at number 4, reason number 4 is a healthy Quinn Ewers. I have my doubts about Ewers, but his ceiling is elite, and he's healthy. And look at his games against Clemson, against Arizona State. Even look at his second game against Georgia, which was better than his first. His second game against Georgia wasn't all that good. 27 for 46, 358 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, missed a lot of throws. Still better than most of his games in the regular season, though. Still, where he was injured for a large portion of that. You look at his game against Clemson, 17 of 24, 202 yards, a touchdown, a pick, 87.5 QBR. Against Arizona State, 20 of 30, 322, 66.7% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, a pick, 183.2 passer rating, and a 91.9 QBR. What is special about Ewers is his experience and how he can change the play at the line of scrimmage. He did that against Clemson on the 2 long runs. He did it against Arizona State on the 4th down. He's an intelligent QB. He's healthy. And if he plays the game of his life here, Texas can absolutely win. Even if he doesn't play the game of his life but just plays well, I think he gives a good chance for Texas to win this game, provided some other things, including the defense, which I actually think is Texas's biggest strong point of the team, is their entire defense here. Texas statistically has the best secondary left in the playoffs outside of Notre Dame, but Texas has played better passing offenses and doesn't have the same type of injuries that Notre Dame does. They also have Jahdae Barron, who won the Thorpe Award, so I would give it to Texas for the best secondary left in the playoffs. When you look at the Longhorns here, Ohio State has an elite secondary, like a really, really, really elite secondary. They're top 3 in both opponent yards per pass attempt and opponent yards per completion, second in yards per pass attempt, third in yards per completion. Notre Dame's first, by the way, in yards per pass attempt, but they're outside the top 40 in yards allowed per completion. I mean, I think they rely a lot on playing incompetent QBs and being very boomer bust in the secondary at times. Texas is first, though, in opponent yards, or Notre Dame, I think, is actually third or top 5, in yards per pass attempt. Texas is first in yards per pass attempt, allowing 5.5, which is, again, first, and they're second in yards per completion allowed, allowing 9.3. They only allow opponents to complete 58.77% of their passes. They only allow opponents to average a 101.3 passer rating, which is second nationally. Jahdae Barron, I think, will be tested. Will be tested by him, as in Jeremiah Smith. But Taff, Makuba, and others are effective in my mind. Like, this is one of the better secondaries in all of college football, if not the best. They tackle well. They do a good job defending. They're defending the end zone. I look at especially Jahdae Barron, who again won the Thorpe Award, but also Taff, who's been a very effective safety. Michael Taff has 10 passes defended, 73 total tackles, 2 picks, and a forced fumble. Makuba has 5 picks. Jahdae Barron has 5 picks and also has 11 passes defended, a sack, and 61 total tackles. Jalen Gilbo has a sack, 3 passes defended. Also forgot to mention that Makuba has a forced fumble. So this secondary for the Longhorns will be tested by Ohio State's wide receiver room. But what if they can limit Ohio State's passing attack? There's a good chance that they can do that. This Texas secondary can, as it's much better than any secondary that Ohio State's played all season long. Number 2 are the lethal linebackers of the Longhorns. Anthony Hill Jr. is the number 1 linebacker for the 2025 NFL Draft, and he has depth behind him as well, mainly speaking of David Benda. When you look at Anthony Hill Jr., he leads the team in total tackles with 107. He has 7.5 sacks, a pick, 4 forced fumbles, and a pass defended. I've mentioned before that Cody Simon's a beast. Anthony Hill Jr. is better. He's also a younger player, too. He's one of the best, if not the best, linebacker in all of college football. And you look at David Benda with 60 total tackles, a forced fumble, and a sack, and Leone LeFou with two sacks, 2 passes defended, a pick, a forced fumble, and 59 tackles. I like Texas's linebacker room. They're fast. They tackle well at the second level. They're disciplined. Pete Kwiatkowski and Johnny Nansen are commanding one of the best defenses in all of college football right now. The linebackers are a big part of it. Reason number 1, though, is their D-line. Now, do I think Texas has the same upside at D-line that, let's say, a Michigan or Penn State do when they're healthy? The answer to that's no. Because they don't have an Abdul Carter, they don't have a Mason Graham, they don't have a Kenneth Grant. I don't even think they have a Josiah Stewart. But they have Colin Simmons, they have Trey Moore, they have Baron Sorrell, They have Vernon Broughton. They have Ethan Burke. They have Bill Norton, and they also have Alfred Collins. They have 7, maybe even 8 or 9 playable defensive linemen. I think that only the 2 D lines I mentioned beforehand, like Penn State, Michigan, maybe Ohio State, are up there in terms of playable defensive linemen. And the difference is Texas rotates all the time, literally all the time. Their leader in sacks is Colin Simmons, who only has 44 total tackles. He has 9 sacks. He has a pick 2 and 3 forced fumbles. Trey Moore, UTSA transfer, has 5.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Baron Sorrell has a fumble recovery, a pass defended, and 5.5 sacks. Vernon Broughton has 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and 3 fumble recoveries. When you look at Ethan Burke, he has 4 passes defended, a pick, and 2 sacks. And Alfred Collins has a sack and 53 total tackles, and he's been a huge presence, along with a forced fumble, on the interior of the D-line for the Longhorns. And this is reason number 1 because of Ohio State's offensive line. And I think that the Longhorns on the D-line will make it very hard for Ohio State to run the ball, and I also think they'll get some pressure on Will Howard and get some sacks, get some passes that have to be thrown away to live on another day. This is a elite Texas defense with one of the nation's best defensive lines. It's not quite Michigan's. I don't think it's quite Penn State's, but I think it's better than Ohio State's, or at least, pretty close. It's in that ballpark. I go back and forth with that, by the way. The more I research Texas's D-line, the more I'm impressed with it. But, the more I don't want to say it's better than Ohio State's D-line quite yet. I'll leave it as a push. We'll decide on my deep dive, which you should hit the notification bell before you watch. You should hit the notification bell, so that way you can watch my deep dive when it comes out in the next 24 to 48 hours. But those are the 10 reasons 10 through 1, why Texas can beat the Buckeyes. We're talking about the fact that they're a big underdog here, massive public underdog. They have team speed and physicality that's impressive. I think that their wide receivers have an edge over Ohio State's corners. Not safeties. Didn't say safeties. I think Ohio State's safeties have an edge over Texas's wide receivers. Gunnar Helm, being the impact player he is, Texas is built to play a game like this against Ohio State and make it close, potentially win. Ewers is healthy. They have NFL offensive tackles. They have a secondary that's among the nation's best. Their linebackers are incredible. They have a future NFL player at linebacker, and their defensive line is very deep, and they also have explosion there, especially with Colin Simmons, who might be at a close to a similar level, although I think Jeremiah Smith is a obviously more impactful freshman. I think a better freshman too, but Colin Simmons is an alien, and he's a true freshman as well. So definitely a name to keep in mind. Let's have a fun Cotton Bowl. Go Longhorns, and hopefully everyone's safe, and hopefully the game isn't delayed. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much, and also share the video around to others who enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do, and comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation, because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brasco Rascal, and Kylo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page, or super chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.